I was sitting in one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, wearing my best dress, when my own husband looked his colleagues in the eye and introduced me as the nanny. Not his wife, not his partner, the nanny. Their eyes scanned me up and down, then dismissed me like I was part of the furniture. I sat there, frozen, humiliated, invisible, until the restaurant manager walked over and said two words that changed everything. "Excuse me, ma'am." Before I tell you how that one moment exposed my husband's deepest shame and changed my life forever, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with the word respect if you've ever been made to feel invisible by someone who claimed to love you. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. Now, let me take you back to where this all began. My name is Simone, and 5 years ago, I thought I had found my forever. I was 27, building my career as a child psychologist, and I met Christopher at a charity gala for children's mental health. He was standing by the bar in a perfectly tailored suit, and when he smiled at me, I felt like I was the only person in the room. He was a corporate finance executive, ambitious and charming, with this way of making you feel like you mattered. We talked for hours that night about everything: our dreams, our families, our hopes for the future. He told me he'd never met anyone like me. We were married within a year. Looking back now, I realize how fast it all happened, how I got swept up in the romance of it all. But at the time, it felt like fate. He'd show up at my office with flowers, plan surprise weekend trips, tell me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. I thought I was living a fairy tale. I thought I had found someone who saw me, really saw me, for everything I was. But fairy tales don't prepare you for the moment the mask slips. It started small. Little comments here and there that I brushed off because I didn't want to be that woman, the one who overthinks everything, who creates problems where there aren't any. Christopher would suggest I wear my hair straighter for his work events, said my natural curls were beautiful, but maybe a bit much for a corporate setting. He'd buy me clothes that were nice, but muted, beige, gray, nothing too bold, nothing too attention-grabbing. When I asked why he never posted pictures of us on social media, he said he liked to keep his personal life private. Professional boundaries, you know? His college friends, all white, all from wealthy families, never came to our home. When I suggested hosting a dinner party, he'd change the subject or say they were too busy. His mother, when she first met me, looked me up and down and said, "Well, at least she's educated, at least." Like my doctorate was some kind of consolation prize for the crime of my skin color. Christopher laughed it off, told me his mom was just old-fashioned, that she'd come around. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. For 3 years, I made myself smaller. I dimmed my light because I thought that's what you did when you loved someone. I told myself that marriage was about compromise, about meeting in the middle. But here's what I didn't understand then. I was the only one compromising. I was the only one shrinking. Then came that dinner. Christopher's firm had just closed a major deal, one of the biggest in their history. He came home that Tuesday evening and told me there was a celebration dinner that Friday at Belmonte, this exclusive steakhouse downtown, where you need a reservation 3 months in advance. He said his senior partners would be there with their wives, and for the first time in our marriage, he wanted me to come. I was so happy I almost cried. Finally, I thought, finally he's ready to really include me in this part of his life. I spent hours getting ready that Friday. I chose this elegant black dress that hugged every curve, had my hair done at the salon, my makeup perfect. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who was beautiful, successful, worthy. I saw someone who belonged. Christopher had to go straight from the office, so I drove separately. The whole way there, I was rehearsing conversations in my head, thinking about how I'd connect with these women, how I'd finally be part of his world. Belmonte was everything you'd expect: crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, servers in tuxedos. I walked through those doors, feeling confident, powerful even. Then I saw Christopher at a corner table with 3 other couples. They were all white, all polished, all radiating that specific kind of wealth that comes from generations of money. I smoothed down my dress and walked over with a smile, expecting him to stand up, to put his arm around me, to say, "Everyone, this is my wife." But when Christopher saw me, his face went pale, actually pale. And when I reached the table, he stood up slowly, and I watched something shift in his eyes. Something cold, something ashamed. "Oh, this is Simone," he said, his voice tight. "She's our nanny." The words hit me like a physical blow. Our nanny. I stood there, my hand still half raised in greeting, my smile frozen on my face like a crack in glass. The colleagues' wives looked at me with polite, dismissive smiles, the kind you give to service workers, pleasant but distant, not quite seeing you as fully human. One of the wives, a blonde woman with pearl earrings, tilted her head. "How wonderful that you could join us tonight. Christopher mentioned you've been with their family for what, 2 years now?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. I looked at Christopher, waiting for him to correct her, to laugh and say it was a joke, to do something, anything to fix this. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just pulled out a chair, not next to him, but at the end of the table, and gestured for me to sit. I don't know why I sat down. Shock? Maybe. Or disbelief. Or some deep, painful part of me that still wanted to believe this wasn't really happening. So I sat, and I felt my heart pounding so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. They talked around me, through me, past me, like I was a piece of furniture that happened to be occupying a chair. One of the wives asked about the children, and Christopher, my husband, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, played along. He created elaborate lies about our non-existent kids. "Yes, she's wonderful with them, very patient. The youngest one, especially, has taken to her." One of the senior partners, a man with silver hair and a Rolex that probably cost more than my car, chuckled. "Good help is so hard to find these days. You're lucky to have someone so dedicated." I sat there with my hands shaking in my lap, unable to eat, unable to speak. Every time I thought about standing up and walking out, something held me back. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was some small, broken part of me that still couldn't believe Christopher would do this. I kept thinking of all the moments I'd ignored, all the signs I'd explained away. His mother's comment, the way he'd never introduced me to his college friends, how he was always suggesting I make myself less visible, less bold, less black. The conversation continued. They talked about golf handicaps and vacation homes in the Hamptons and which private schools their children attended. I was invisible, completely and utterly invisible. And then one of the wives, a brunette with a voice like honey and venom mixed together, turned to me. "You know, Simone, I'm on the board of a domestic placement agency. If you ever need a reference or want to explore other opportunities, I'd be happy to help." Christopher nodded, actually nodded encouragingly, like this was a perfectly reasonable thing to offer his wife. And that's when something inside me broke. Not shattered, broke. Like ice cracking before it gives way completely. I was about to stand up. My muscles were tensing, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I was going to leave, consequences be damned. And then I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, ma'am." I turned and saw a distinguished black man in his 50s, wearing a suit that marked him as management. The restaurant manager. Christopher straightened in his seat, probably assuming the man was coming to check on the important guests to make sure everything met their standards. But the manager walked directly to me. He looked at my face, and recognition lit up his eyes. "Dr. Simone Harrison." He used my maiden name, my professional name. "I thought that was you." The table went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that thick carpet. The manager smiled, a genuine warm smile that felt like sunlight after days of rain. "My daughter was in your care 3 years ago at Children's Mercy Hospital, Kendra Wesley. She was in that car accident, had severe trauma. The work you did with her after the accident, Dr. Harrison, you saved her life in more ways than one." I could barely breathe. I remembered Kendra, a bright 12-year-old who'd witnessed something no child should ever see. We'd worked together for months, slowly, carefully helping her process and heal. "She's in college now," Mr. Wesley continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Studying psychology because of you. She wants to help children the way you helped her." He turned to the table, to these people who'd been treating me like I was invisible, like I was less than. "This woman is one of the finest child psychologists in the state. She's changed countless lives, including my daughter's." Christopher's face had drained of all color. The colleagues looked confused, glancing between me and Christopher, trying to piece together what was happening. The blonde wife's eyes went wide. "Wait," she said slowly. "Dr. Harrison, I've heard that name. You're not the nanny, you're his—" I found my voice. Finally, after sitting in silence for an hour, I found my voice, and it came out steady and strong and clear. "I'm his wife." The silence that followed was deafening. You could feel the shock rippling around the table like a wave. One of the senior partners turned to Christopher, his face darkening. "Christopher, what the hell is going on here?" Christopher stammered. His polished corporate confidence had completely evaporated. "It was a joke. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean." I stood up, slowly, deliberately. I looked at each person at that table, and then I spoke. "No, this wasn't a joke. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was shame. Your shame, Christopher." I turned to the others. "My name is Dr. Simone Harrison Wells. I'm a child psychologist with 12 years of experience. I have a doctorate from Columbia University. I own my own practice. I've published research. I've testified before Congress on children's mental health policy." I paused, letting that sink in. "And yes, I'm his wife. The wife he's been hiding for 3 years because I don't fit the image he wants to project to people like you." Christopher reached for my arm. "Simone, please, sit down. We can discuss this later. You're making a scene." I pulled away from his touch like it burned. "There's nothing to discuss. Not here, not anymore, not ever." Mr. Wesley, bless him, stepped closer. "Ma'am, can I call you a car?" I looked at this stranger who'd shown me more respect in 5 minutes than my own husband had in 3 years, and I smiled. A real smile. "Thank you, Mr. Wesley. I'd appreciate that. And please tell Kendra I'm so proud of her." As I gathered my purse, I heard one of the senior partners speak to Christopher, his voice ice cold. "We'll be discussing this on Monday, Christopher. Extensively." I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, my shoulders back, my dignity intact. Behind me, I could hear the murmur of shocked voices. Christopher's frantic attempts to explain, to smooth over, to salvage whatever he could from the wreckage he'd created. But I didn't look back, not once. The car Mr. Wesley called arrived, and as I slid into the back seat, I started to cry. Not sad tears, angry tears, relieved tears. Tears that had been building for 3 years, of making myself smaller, quieter, less visible. Tears for every time I'd ignored my instincts, every time I'd explained away his behavior, every time I'd chosen to believe his excuses instead of trusting what I knew in my gut. I filed for divorce the following week. Christopher tried everything, apologizing, crying, sending flowers, showing up at my practice. He blamed pressure at work, anxiety about his career, his parents' expectations. He said he loved me, that he'd made a terrible mistake, that he'd spend the rest of his life making it up to me if I'd just give him another chance. But here's what I'd learned. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And Christopher had shown me exactly who he was. He was a man who would rather betray me, humiliate me, reduce me to nothing, than face the discomfort of his colleagues, knowing he'd married a black woman. That's not love. That's not even close to love. His firm asked him to resign. Word had spread about what happened. One of the wives had talked, apparently appalled by what she'd witnessed. Christopher's carefully built reputation crumbled. His friends, one by one, distanced themselves from him. He lost everything he'd been so desperate to protect. And me? I started rebuilding. I took back my maiden name professionally. Dr. Simone Harrison, just me. My practice grew. Word spread about the restaurant incident, and instead of hurting my reputation, it became a rallying point. Other professional Black women reached out, sharing their own stories of being hidden, diminished, made to feel less than. I started speaking at conferences, writing about the psychological impact of internalized racism in relationships, advocating for women who'd experienced what I had. I saw Christopher one last time, about 6 months after that dinner. We met to sign the final divorce papers. He looked broken, thinner, older, haunted. He asked me if I'd ever forgive him. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I said, "I forgive you, Christopher. I do, but I'll never forget. And I'll never ever be with someone who needs me to be invisible again. I'm not a woman who can be hidden. I'm not a woman who should be hidden. And the right person will know that." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and signed the papers. A year later, I met someone new. A man who introduced me to everyone, his friends, his family, his colleagues, with pride. Who posts pictures of us together. Who loves my natural hair and my bold dresses, and everything about me that Christopher wanted to dim. Who sees me not as something to hide, but as someone to celebrate. That dinner at Belmonte was the worst and best night of my life. Worst, because I saw the truth about the man I'd married. The reality I'd been avoiding for so long. Best, because it freed me. It showed me that I deserved more, that I was worth more, that my light was meant to shine brightly, not be hidden under someone else's shame. To anyone watching this who's been made to feel less than, who's been hidden or diminished, or asked to shrink, listen to me. You are not the problem. Their shame is not yours to carry. You deserve someone who celebrates you, who is proud to stand next to you, who would never ever ask you to be anything less than exactly who you are. If this story touched you, do me 3 things. First, hit that like button. Second, subscribe so you never miss stories of strength and survival. And third, this is the important one. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they deserve better. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had a moment that showed you someone's true colors? I read every single one, and your stories matter. They remind us all that we're not alone. Remember, you're not the nanny in anyone's life story. You're the main character in yours. Until next time, stay strong, stay proud, and never let anyone dim your light.